Aslan is on the move. Can you feel it? Is he calling you? What the heck is he talking about? So, this guy named C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien, Christian guys, were in a whiskey bar, men's club, and they were drinking. And they were lamenting the fact that there was a dearth of children's literature that taught godly values. And so they challenged each other. They said, hey, let's write a kid's book and teach values to the kids. And so J.R. Tolkien went on to write The Lord of the Rings. And C.S. Lewis wrote The Chronicles of Narnia. 9 books. It was one of the first books I read as a kid. I think I was in 6th, 7th grade. We would do the trips to the library, and I pulled this book off the shelf, and I began to read it. And in there was a character, and this stuck to me. Beaver's talking to the 4 kids that enter this magical world. And he says, they say that Aslan is on the move. Perhaps has already landed. And now a very curious thing happened. None of the children knew who Aslan was any more than you do. But the moment the beaver had spoken these words, everyone felt quite different. So Aslan is a lion in the book, and he represents Jesus Christ. He shows up in all 9 books of the Chronicles of Narnia. And Aslan was a powerful being. And he surrendered to the White Witch and allowed the White Witch to torture him with all its demonic minions, and to pull its mane out of its face and to stab it until he died on the stone table. And there he laid for days. And 2 of the girls went and they cried over his dead body. The next day when they arrived, he was gone and the stone table was broken, like the veil in the temple, ripped from top to bottom. And Aslan appeared and said, what happened? And he said these words, the witch knew the deep magic, but there is a magic deeper still, which she did not know. That when a willing victim who had committed no treachery was killed in a traitor's stead, the stone table would crack and death itself would start working backwards. The Lion and the Witch in the Wardrobe, 1950. I remember reading that because Edmund had partaken of the Turkish delight and became a slave to the White Witch who represented the devil and the bondage that he enslaves people with. And I remember thinking, I wish a lion would die for me, not knowing that one had. Even back as a kid, I felt the drawing. I felt the calling. And you think, wow. And then in the silver chair, you read this, Aslan speaking. You would not have called to me unless I had been calling to you. I believe God calls everyone at least once. Whether we choose to answer the phone or not is up to us. So he was calling and laying seeds in my life and drawing me to himself until 1985. I got everything I ever wanted, and I wasn't happy. And I read the book, and I realized Aslan is on the move. So I bowed the knee. Joy and unspeakable glory, truth, knowledge. Became a pastor. Did that for 20 some odd years. And then tragedy struck. And I wish I could say I took my own advice. But instead, I took a break. Said I was going on sabbatical. It means a long vacation to get my head together. But instead, I entered 10 years of malaise. In Hebrews chapter 2, the Bible says we need to be careful not to take things for granted lest we drift. And I liken Christianity to swimming up a stream. And as you swim, you pass the big rock, you pass the giant hollow tree, you pass these things along the way. And the moment you stop swimming and you just start treading water, you don't stay in the same place. Pretty soon, the scenery starts becoming very familiar. Suddenly you see a big rock, and you see a hollow tree, and you see the beaver dam, because you're going backwards. Things that had long been left behind in my past began to show up back in my life. And for those 10 years, I still said, I believe in you, God, I love you. But my prayers changed from rather praise and thankfulness to help me, God, just the pleas of a begging person drowning in the water. What happened? I took my eyes off Jesus. When Peter was in the boat and Jesus said, go on ahead, and the storm came and they thought they were going to drown, and all of a sudden they see Jesus walking on the water. Peter says, hey, can I come out and walk with you? Sure, come on. Peter jumped out of the boat and starts walking on the water, looking at Jesus, thinking, this is cool. But then he realized, he's like, dude, I'm walking on water. What's going on? He started looking at the circumstances, and what happened? He began to sink. And as he's going down, he said, Jesus. He reached up his hand, and Jesus pulled him back out of the water and into the boat. So, took my eyes off the Lord, even though I said I still had him on there. And those things started showing up back in my life. And so, Aslan was still calling, though. He was calling to me. I was standing outside a pub, smoking a cigarette, telling crude jokes to people that were out there. This one guy stopped and said, hey, are you Pastor Paul? I was like thinking, busted. And he said, listen, I'm so-and-so, and I just want to say, when I was a kid, I got in trouble with the police, and the court ordered that I had to be counseled. And my dad asked you to come to the house and to counsel me. And he said, you didn't sit on a couch and ask me stupid stuff. You came out and played basketball and talked with me as we shot hoops. He said, I just want to let you know that changed the course of my life. Talk about being busted. Made me feel miserable. And I barely remember it. Just thinking. It was a nothing thing. But yet, you never know. In the ordinary, God can sometimes touch people. But still, with my fingers in my ears, running helter-skelter to destruction, I went on. But I can't ignore it anymore. The Father's voice is calling with an urgency I've never heard before. We live in really strange times. Some would even say the last times. The enemy is making its final move. But I read this, that when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of God will raise up a standard against him. So I hear Aslan calling. Aslan is on the move. That's what came to my mind as I began spending time in the closet, reaching out to God. I ran, and I had one last thing I had to try, a fantasy that was in my brain. And I got it. And inside, I still heard Aslan calling my name. He says this in The Magician's Nephew. But length of days with an evil heart is only length of misery. And she already begins to know it. All get what they want, but they do not always like it. I got what I wanted, but I knew I didn't like it. The malaise. Crawled in my closet, gave that to the Lord, gave it up to God, pressed in. And I can't tell you what it's like after 10 years of not having experienced joy, to have joy flood your soul. It's quite different. So, I'm putting together this channel because I have to have an outlet. Don't want to be a Dead Sea Christian. You know what the Dead Sea is? It's a body of water in Israel that all the rivers run into, but it has no outlet. And so the water goes in there and just evaporates, and the salt content is so high there's nothing but death in there. You can only receive for so long before you have to give. And so what this channel is going to be spillover from my experiences. I've got a story to tell. I was saved in San Diego in 1985 in what was like an Acts chapter 2 revival. Some of the stories are unbelievable, but I lived it. And I got friends that I'm friends with on Facebook that lived it with me. And they saw it and experienced it. And though I've seen many miracles, crazy, real miracles, the biggest miracle I witnessed was how God changed a handful, 40 people's lives, more than that, and how their lives were transformed, and what happened to these people because Aslan was on the move. Now I have to say that I got nothing in this. I'm not trying to be a pastor. People always ask me, Pastor Paul, you ever going to do a church again? I'm like, I'd love to if I didn't hate people so much. Being a pastor is one of the most thankless jobs. You pour your soul into people. You help them, and they poop on you. But that's what the church is, man. It's just broken people. And what do hurt people do? Hurt people hurt people. So I have to warn you, if you're not a believer, this is important. This is what Aslan said. He said, I cannot tell that to this old sinner, and I cannot comfort him either. He has made himself unable to hear my voice. If I spoke to him, he would only hear growlings and roarings. Oh, Adam's sons, how cleverly you defend yourselves against all that might do you good. when you have an unconverted heart, when your heart isn't seeking the Lord and you hear someone talk about the Bible and God, all you hear is judgment and condemnation. And that's not the purpose. The purpose is to hear the Father's voice calling you with an urgency to come in from the darkness before it's finally time to shut the door. I believe that day's approaching, and I believe he's calling all those pastors on sabbatical, all those believers who had calamity come in their lives, and rather than reach up for the hand of Jesus as they're sinking, they went under the waves. But it's not over. My devotion this morning, I was reading Psalm 32. It says, "Oh, how happy is he whose transgression is forgiven and whose sin is covered. Happy is the man whom the Lord does not impute crimes, and in whose spirit there is no guile." There's no deceitfulness. Look, I get nothing from this. I just want to encourage you in your faith walk. I want to give you the tools to maybe have an Acts 2 revival. I want to guide you a little bit to keep you from some potholes. But more than anything, I want you to know what real joy is. So, I'm going to post on here as I feel inspired. I'm a little kooky. I play guitar, but I can't sing. I sing, but it's hurtful to the ears. But I share as I sing. Sometimes there's a little message there. I don't pre-plan anything. The only thing I prepare is my heart. So, check it out. Take a look. Hopefully there'll be videos underneath this. And remember, Aslan is on the move.